Nikolas. Nikolas, you're on the air. What can we do for you tonight?
Hello. So I wanted to talk about, well, it's probably on the call screen for you, but being, I want to say like a victim because that sounds like the wrong word, but being like intensely affected by like internalized homophobia.
Sure.
From like being around so many extremely homophobic and extremely religious people like almost my whole life.
Yeah.
Like I live in California, but like I live in Southern California, which is known for being extremely like accepting. But like the area I live in is just bad. And there's so many like evangelical Christians and extremely religious people that say just absolutely horrible things constantly. Like I'm in college, and in between my classes, I used to like sit at this one bakery before I could drive, and I would hear people just talking openly about like, yeah, the gays need to go and get fixed and stuff like that, which is extremely uncomfortable. It's not fun. There's like women in my ceramics class who talk about like, oh yeah, I remember back in my day when we used to beat the gays with baseball bats and stuff. And I was like, let's not talk about that.
Sure.
It was not a fun time to be around. But like, I hear such negative things constantly, all the time. Like,
what kind of steps have you been taking to deconstruct that and to heal from those experiences?
Well, it's like, I don't know, because I know being gay isn't a bad thing. It's just not. It's just how it is. It's just a human thing. And it's just like weird hearing the same thing constantly, even though like I know it's not true, but it's like always being drilled into me. And there's like people who don't know I'm gay that'll say like all these different horrible things to me. And I'll be like, yep, okay. And it's just like, wow, if this person really knew this stuff about me, they would absolutely hate me. And it's weird just thinking like how different I am than these people think I am. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, do you have anybody that you can talk to about this who's safe and affirming? Because that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, my parents and my siblings, and my boyfriend, of course, like, yeah, but like, it's, I don't know, my mom recently, in the past, like, couple of years, has gotten a lot more religious. My dad's gotten even more into, like, atheist discussions and stuff. Like, he's been an atheist my whole life, but, like, gotten more into Atheist Community of Austin stuff, shows like this.
Good for him.
I don't know. It's good. We listen to a lot of the shows a lot. I actually called into Truth Wanted the other day, so that was good.
Oh, fun.
But yeah, it's like I don't know how to, because like after having something drilled into you constantly for like your entire life, even if you know it's not true, it's still like weird.
Yeah, it's a really challenging thing, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with. The good news is there are a lot of things that can be helpful. You know, I'm not going to say that there is a cure-all, and I definitely want to validate those experiences, how hurtful that is, and how insidious and lasting it can be. I mean, these types of thought patterns can take years and years, a lifetime even, to really deprogram. At the same time, there are things that you can be doing and things that you can be working on to find a lot of relief. And so I hope that you are kind of investigating and just staying curious about those sorts of things.
Yeah, one thing that I have sometimes said is that it can take a long time, you know, after being programmed like this or being around this kind of language, or with similar things, or there are parallels with fear of hell, for example. It can just take a long time for your emotions to catch up to your mind. because trauma really does live in the body.
Mhm.
Recognizing it, naming it is the first step, to finding your way past it.
Yeah, it's like most of it isn't like, oh, I think I'm a bad person, because like I know I'm not and stuff like that. But like most of it is knowing people that are close to me that like do know I'm gay, but say like do the other thing, like, oh, you're not like the rest of them.
Mhm.
And that's just such an uncomfortable thing to hear. It's
It
like,
is.
what do you mean the rest of them? That's so dehumanizing.
Yeah, is
It
the rest
is.
of them my boyfriend? Is the rest of
Right.
them my future
Yeah,
boyfriend or my
exactly.
ex-boyfriend or my friends that I go out to clubs with or the bars that I go to or the books that I read, the movies that I watch? I mean,
Yeah, and frankly, bigots love to have tokens, right? That they can use to say, "Oh, look, I'm not a bigot." So Milo Yiannopoulos and his whole relationship with Breitbart, right?
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
throws the entire rest of the queer community under the bus, but he has good friends and makes money from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about, though, is the fact that a lot of them could have also, if this is a town where everybody thinks this way and you hear this so often, these people are also victims of that same mentality and those same messages. So even just knowing you as a person and seeing that you are defying these crazy stereotypes that they've been fed can potentially help people to be a little bit more accepting in the long run. Not that that's on you, not that that's an emotional requirement for you to carry, but it is helpful to think. I know a lot of people in my life had no idea what a bisexual person was or what an atheist person was until I came out to them, and then they were like, "Oh, okay, I guess that I'm kind of wrong about everybody." Yeah. So it's
I specifically try and do that. Like I try and not act like a certain way that like most people think of, like, oh, this is a trademark gay man. This is what they act like. I specifically say like, I'm never going to act like this because I don't want people like that seem to be like, oh, well, this is a bad person or something like that. It's like, and it's not just religious people like being horribly like violent and stuff. It's also like a bunch, like when I was going to high school, a bunch of girls who were like super fetishizing of gay men, like taking pictures of my boyfriend and I just sitting down and stuff. And I was like, please stop. That's so creepy and uncomfortable.
No, that's not okay.
Gross.
It's definitely a challenge, and I think it's one that really everybody is working through on some level. I definitely, again, we don't need to get into the oppression Olympics or these types of things where we're trying to compare traumas, but I think that everybody, the people in the town that you're in who are espousing this kind of bullshit, the people who are out and proud and comfortable with themselves, the people who are everywhere else in the spectrum are in some way challenged by these types of thoughts, by the people around them, and as you said, internalized within themselves. And we're all kind of working through that. So I guess I just want to really validate where you're coming from, but also normalize it a little bit and let you know that this is something that people are working through and something that we're all making progress on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and we've got a pretty awesome community here on Discord, on Reddit, on Twitter. So if you ever need people to kind of have a soundboard and bounce off of, we're here for you too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate you giving us a call tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Take care. It is a really prevalent thing, and I wonder how often queer folks, especially as they are maybe just coming into their identity, maybe just now starting to experience community, especially when you pair that with leaving the church and these different things.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people realize how common this is, how it's something that really everybody is struggling with on some level.
Yeah, especially if you can because it sounds like he's kind of trying to pass right now in order to make his life a little bit easier, which is
Human.
unfortunate but understandable.
Sure.
And it also, it is a very weird place to be in when you can pass and you are passing in a conversation and you hear these things being brought up. Most of my relationships have appeared, at least, even if we're both queer in some way, have appeared to be like pretty straight relationships. And so people would say things in front of me, in front of my partner, and we would just be like, well, I don't know what to do with this information because you're talking to people who you wouldn't be talking to otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up that hearing around me and sometimes repeating myself just really awful things about, gay people in particular. I don't think we had much of a concept of trans people in my community, which is, I think, part of why it took me so long to figure out that that was a thing that I could be. And I also had to figure out that, gender and sexuality operate independently from one another.
Right, that being trans isn't just like an extra weird version of being gay, which is how it was very much communicated to me at a young age.
I think as I got exposed to a little more things outside the strict evangelical community, I started to have some concept of what I would then have called a, transvestite in my head. And I'm not super femme, that. And I didn't really realize that I could also be attracted to men. I certainly wasn't exclusively attracted to men. So I didn't identify with that. I did identify with a lot of women, though. I did make good friendships with women and want to spend more time with those friends than with male friends in many cases. I mean, I had some good male friends too, like in high school and in college, but less in college. But yeah, I mean, I remember in middle school and high school saying things like, oh, they should just all have to go live on an island somewhere, talking about AIDS being God's punishment and this kind of stuff. And I do remember one moment in middle school where I was at a friend's house and we were just talking about girls and sex and stuff as you do. And we both masturbated while we were having this talk. And then I just felt extremely guilty about that. And I think way disproportionately guilty. And I think that's because there was something sort of homoerotic about that. Or, at the time I thought of myself as a weird boy, so, and I thought, that having any kind of sexual intimacy with another boy or a man would be like the worst thing anyone could possibly do, so I don't think that I consciously processed that at the time, but I cried for like 45 minutes. But yeah, so in Russia, back to, that part of the conversation, that's when I stopped going to church entirely. I had not been going to church regularly for a long time, but I got confirmed Episcopalian in 2012 and tried to stay that to just kind of have this cultural Christianity.
Right.
And in Moscow, the Anglican church was very far away. The subway station closest to it was still a long hike to the church. And every Sunday I was like, that's a real schlep. I don't want to do that. Yeah. And then finally I was like, I guess I just really don't want to go to church anymore. And, it wasn't too long after that, that, I really came to understand that I was queer and that gender had something to do with it. And then to identify as a transgender woman. And the night that happened, so at that point I was, poly dating as a secondary partner, but she was the only person I was dating, this queer girl in Moscow, a Russian-American girl. She was born in Moscow. She grew up partly in America. She was back in Moscow. And we were, she used to tease me, why are so many of your friends lesbians? Why are, and I was like, well, that's not normal. And, lesbians are just who I get along with. They're my people. So,
Right.
So we were watching this wonderful 1999 lesbian cult classic with Natasha Lyonne, But I'm a Cheerleader. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like a spoof of conversion therapy, but also a lesbian coming of age love story. And
RuPaul.
And RuPaul.
There you go.
It's a fantastic.
It's everything you need.
And it's on YouTube for free because everyone devalues lesbian culture.
More for us.
So yeah, we were watching that and I said something to her. I don't even remember what, because it was not important relative to what came next. But we turned and looked at each other. We had this like long eye contact, and she just said to me, "You are such a dyke." And I was like, it was weirdly profound. I had this like spiritual experience. I was like, holy shit, that's a thing. It's possible for me to be.
Interesting.
And so it was after that I really began exploring that, and I think not coincidentally, like when I finally had these revelations and I started learning more about myself, I stopped being afraid of hell, even though I'd stopped believing in it a long time prior to that.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting development, but I still wasn't super comfortable with my body or in my body, in grad school for part of it. After I got divorced, I started picking up swing dance. And so that was fun. Like Lindy Hop, Charleston, Balboa.
I love that stuff. Yep.
And I got to like higher intermediate, I would say. Probably could do some advanced stuff, but I struggled with the sense of space. Like on a crowded dance floor, it was a struggle for me not to like accidentally kick people. I've always struggled with space. I hate parallel parking. I'm really good with words because, like I said, as a little kid, like I just came to live in my head. I don't feel quite right. I don't know why. So I just observe everything. I become this little anthropologist, and I've been on hormone replacement therapy for 3 months, exactly 3 months as of tomorrow.
Wow.
And it's only like in the last month that I'm starting to really feel more embodied and comfortable in my body, because that's what was missing. Like, I mean, you've probably seen like I've been posting like all these selfies of my boobs.
You should go follow her on Twitter, guys.
Just like super weird and immature. But, I mean, second puberty, it is kind of like being a teenager again in some ways, right? So I never wanted to show people my body before. Like, I still don't like everything about it. I wish I could lose some weight. I want to get into a good exercise routine now. And I think now, just to be healthy, and I think now that might be the time that I'll really be able to like stick to that, because after a period of like pretty bad depression, I'm getting some energy back and some excitement in my life. And I think it is because my body is starting to match how I feel. So I went from like, I was not even we went swimming a lot growing up, but in recent years I was like, I didn't even want to swim with my shirt off because I didn't like my body, or even just go swimming. Like I rarely did it, but it's so strange. All of a sudden I'm like, I'm growing breasts. Like my body is doing this, and I want to show them to everyone because it's awesome.
I love it. Yay, celebrating bodies. Oh, that's great.